Dan, you know what's next here. You know what's next, and you're going to be a big part of this as well. You've been an amazing guest co-host, but again, your responsibilities are not over. So sorry, you have work to do because we need to hear your opinion on things because right now it is the top 10 hottest comics of the week based off of cover prices data. That is right, data, real data, sales data, the hottest books that were sold in 1 week. Cover price comes up with a top 10 hottest comics on a Monday. Our show is obviously live on a Friday. Chris comes up with his 3 most interesting picks from that top 10 list and tells you why they're interesting. Now, just because they're interesting doesn't mean he thinks that they're good. Keep that in mind. Also, Cover Price doesn't sponsor us. We use them as kind of a stock index, kind of like a tool to measure what's going on, what's hot in the market. So we're just going to get right into it, Chris. Are you ready?
Let's go.
Dan, are you ready?
I'm ready, sir.
Because here's the top 10 hottest comics of the week. That is right. Number 10, we have X Factor. Number 6, it's the first full appearance of Apocalypse. At number 9, we have Inhumans. Number 5, the first cameo of Yelena Belova. You recently saw her in the Black Widow film. At number 8, we have Thor 245, the first appearance of He Who Remains. Loki's a big deal, guys, and you should know why. He Who Remains is important. For number 7, we have Basilisk. Number 1, the second print. This has a lot to do with something is killing children. Slaughterhouse. Number 6, The Nice House on the Lake. Number 1, that book is just not leaving this top 10 list. Avengers number 267 is number 4, the first appearance of the Council of Kang. At number 3 of Avengers 269, Immortus versus Kang. At number 2, we have Chariot number 1. And at number 1, we have Avengers number 2. I'm just happy, guys, that we do not have X Factor number 10 on this list this week.
Did you start without me?
I couldn't stretch it out any further. I could not. It's time to talk, Chris. It's time to be honest with our audience.
I think I just pulled a hamstring hopping over the couch. I'm getting old.
Where do you go? Where do you go when I bring that up? Or do we not want to get into it?
Well, actually, this week, what took me so long is that Dan's just been wearing us out. I had to go get some, and I don't drink coffee. I had to run to the fridge and sip on some of my green tea latte that I picked up from Starbucks earlier.
Oh, God, that's got to be gross by now.
I had to get some fuel in me going into this top 10.
All right. We're here. You got the fuel. Let's get to it. What is your first most interesting pick of the week, Chris?
First off, I want to say, what an interesting list because it was nothing but Kang in indies. So, yep, that's how it went down. But I picked 3, and my number 1 pick, I could have easily went with a full-on Kang list. I had to get some love to some indies. My number 3 pick is Never Never number 1, a new heavy metal release. Look at that cover. That's dope. So, again, I brought this up with a few picks over the last couple of months. What these indie companies are doing right now with the horror genre is absolutely amazing. This right here is a new title, like I said, from heavy metal. It's a very dark take on Peter Pan's Never Never Land. So now this is one that I haven't picked up. I haven't read. I'm not too big on horror myself, but this is one that's intriguing me. I'm actually hitting my shop tomorrow, and I'm going to see if they have one of these. This was short ordered by LCSs. So that's what drove the secondary market sales up. Obviously, there was high demand. I'm telling you, people are demanding this horror genre right now within comic books. The short order pushed a lot of people to order online. It drove the sales increase up 156%, with the high raw going for $30. And again, look, that high raw, I think, is merely, I don't just sit and assume speculation value. I sit and look at it as like those early adapters. It's the people that want their hands on this, maybe even just to read it. And they can't find it at their LCS. And maybe they're just willing to pay a little more money to buy it off eBay because they want it and they want it now.
Yeah, this is an interesting one as well because I follow a lot of message board forums, and when this came out, everybody's like, I went to my local comic shop, I could not find it anywhere. So short ordered, I think, is an understatement. But it's an interesting, it's an interesting premise with a dark take on Peter Pan's Neverland. So I don't think I would read something like this, but it's cool to see a book like this make the top 10 list. Dan, thoughts?
I want to read this. I actually want to read this one.
Well, since it's an indie, I'm at a handicap because, again, I'm literally just getting into these. And I was looking in my bag. I did not buy this one. I might have seen it at the LCS. But since Chris is recommending this, that's good enough for me. I'll go ahead and pick it up.
Yeah.
Chris, you have read this, Chris?
No, I have not. I'm actually going to A1 Comics tomorrow to see if they have any stash.
I'll bet you that they don't, but you got to let everybody know next week if you got one. I would be really surprised if you found this. Maybe that, you're obviously a preferred customer because you're who you are. And maybe they'll treat you well, but I really don't think you're going to find this walking in. So, all right. That's a good first start right there. I think Dan De La Torre is definitely going to kind of lean towards these next two. So, Chris, what is your second most interesting pick from this list?
All right, everyone. More indies or Kang? Which route did I go?
I think I gave a little bit of a clue by what I said. But
okay, yep, absolutely. My number 2, Thor 245. This is the first appearance of He Who Remains. Folks, I tried to warn you. And, I don't know. Nobody listened. I came out last year in 2020. And I did a video talking about this book for, I believe it was a video, books to invest in before the 2022 MCU slate, something like that. And I think I released it like late last year or something. This book was on there. And obviously we saw Jonathan Majors in Loki as Immortus with a mix mashup of He Who Remains. And this book has just taken off, 247% increase in sales with a high raw of $160. This is just crazy because, again, this is a book that you could easily find in the back issue bins for under $10 forever. For years and years and years. And even going in to the Loki show, watching the forums myself, a lot of people weren't even familiar with He Who Remains and didn't understand that He Who Remains wasn't a Kang variant in the comic books. It's its own entity and so forth. And that's fine. We got to educate ourselves somehow. And I know that a lot of people watch the shows or the movies and then take that and dive into the comic books. And that's fine. I'm not knocking that. But another rate of increase on these books that just blows my mind. And look, from 2021, basically with WandaVision and the first big reveal there with White Vision and what that did with West Coast Avengers 45, I can't wait to probably say somewhere in mid-2022, like a year from now, next summer, I'm going to look at all these books from these shows, which is West Coast 45, Strange Tales 159, Contessa, first appearance from Falcon and Winter Soldier spec, to the He Who Remains and Immortus spec from Loki or the TVA and so forth. I'm going to look at all these a year from now because a lot of these are still Silver Age, or like this is a Bronze Age book. Some of them are copper, like West Coast 45. And these are books that even as back issue books, as they age out, are gaining value already, including your random run fillers from these ages. All right. I'm very interested in seeing how these books are going to hold up on the market because this has been these TV show specs. And the way Marvel's bringing in these characters that kind of were in the background and weren't as popular before, it's very interesting to see what the long-term hold is going to be on these values.
Yep. First off, Shout out to Prime Time Treasure Hunter Dom. Thanks for joining us. Here's the deal, man. That's very fast. Yeah, we all want to see how these look a year from now. In terms of like, I think it's kind of like kind of a standard. It's really not a good idea to invest in villains, right? If you're looking, for a few reasons. But Kang, the way they've set up Kang, he is going to be a pivotal part of the MCU for the next at least 2 years. Am I right? Because he's going to be in the next Ant-Man film, which I think is 2023.
February 2023, yep.
So we're looking at, that may be the bookend for Kang, unless he's going to be built up to the next big bad that would open up to a Secret Wars or something like that. Who knows what could happen? But we're looking at a good 2 years where we got Kang. That's my thought. Dan, what's your thought?
Well, a couple things. One is the luxury of being an older collector, and I buy, I don't sell. I have this issue, and I paid maybe 50 cents for it, and I just have it because of the storyline. Now, regarding Kang himself, look how much fun we're having speculating regarding what the MCU is going to do. They can go in all kinds of directions, and there's all kinds of characters and not even on the table yet. The Beyonder's one of them. Galactus could have something to do with this at some point. All these powerhouses, we don't know how they're going to mix this. We don't know how Kang became as powerful as he is. He seems to be the ultimate power, but remember, he admitted he's just human, flesh and blood. So there's all these areas that they could go into. So Kang is going to be there for a while. But as far as, I think we also both agree that the MCU is not going to be here forever. I mean, we are kind of seeing what Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko did back in the 60s. It was brilliance. Hit after hit after hit. It was almost like they could do no wrong in those years. Yep. We're kind of seeing that with Kevin Feige and his very talented team at the MCU. So however long this lasts is however long we're going to be talking about it.
Mm-hmm. What they've done, again, I say this all the time, having a production background myself, it is so hard what they've done. And they've done it flawlessly. I mean, granted, they've had a few not so very subpar, in fact, stinkers of films, but I'm talking maybe 3 out of 23, 24. So here we are. We're 13 years into the existence of the MCU. What they have managed to do is unbelievable, let alone coordinating all these things, but executing on such a high level. I don't see them slowing down anytime soon, guys, because they have so much to pull from. And they're continuing having a revolving door. They're starting to integrate younger talent in there. You're starting to see Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr. go, but you're starting to see more integrated in and tapping into these incredible villains that are part of MCU lore or the Marvel Universe lore, like a Kang. And I mean, Galactus is going to be coming. It's just incredible. And I don't want to come off as a Marvel fanboy, but it's hard not to because they've done such a great job executing.
I do believe the MCU is, I think as long as Kevin Feige is alive and able to be in the executive position he's in, the MCU is gonna remain. The success of the MCU, that magic that like you were talking about, Dan, like during the Ditko, Kirby Lee era, that's, I think, a bigger question for me is, can they keep up the magic? I don't see that ending or slowing down anytime soon. I think it's progressed. I think we're still on that upward curve. Yeah. But to your point too, Jeff, villains are an interesting one with comic books because some let's look at Taskmaster, for example. And I think Taskmaster is going to remain in the MCU to some capacity. But let's look at what that book is going to do in the near future. But I think one thing that remains, besides he who remains, is the fact that when you create, like you were saying, what we're seeing right now with these types of villains, he who remains Kang, I think it's something that's going to have that lasting effect to where when you get characters in the MCU, regardless of if they're a villain or a hero, and you get a solid actor to play them, that turns the role into an iconic role, and that sticks around for at least a few films or shows or a few years, that's going to remain. And I think that is going to etch the fact that once it's there, it's always going to correlate to the books, even for the younger generations. Because the just like Star Wars, you know, when my kids grew up, Star Wars movies were still there. They didn't watch them in the movie theater, but they're watching them just like I did as a kid. And then they could go to the toys and go to the comics and, you know, dress up as them on Halloween in the Vader costumes and have that connection to these characters just as we did seeing them in the movie theater or whatnot. I think it's going to be the same for the MCU. These movies, this epic cinematic experience is not going away. And I'm hopeful that Kang is going to be one of those characters that remains pivotal and is going to leave their mark. And I think a lot of these books are absolutely going to, you know, hold some weight. And one last thing to say, for those that are such naysayers saying, oh, people that watch the movies don't read the comics and all this stuff, or you didn't know about that character until you watched the show or movie. So what? They're getting educated now. Now we know. Now hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people know who He Who Remains is, and they know now. They're not going to forget.
When Disney bought Marvel, I've said this before, it'll go down in history as the greatest purchase in entertainment history. With that purchase, they literally bought over 80 years of storyline. What's behind me are scripts, and the scripts and the stories are beautifully interwoven with each other. Marvel did a fantastic job with that. I don't know if that's true in DC since I didn't read DC. It was a money thing. I didn't have money to buy them. I understand that they don't. They're more ensemble kind of, you know, individual stories. They don't interlink like the Marvel stories. So as long as you have someone as talented as the Feige team, this is going to be decades and decades of incredible entertainment.
That's fact. However, there's one thing we need to kind of be aware of too. There's one thing that we take for granted that we don't think of. We may hit a point, and this is that we may hit a point of superhero fatigue. We may hit a point of this type of story, a fatigue in just the lack of it, to be like, okay, another superhero film. I'm not there personally at all. Grover may be there, but I just want to say that there is a chance for something like that to happen. It's important that all of these entities, Warner Brothers, you know, Marvel, Disney, they keep their films fresh, but there is that possibility.
Grover has something to say. No, I'm just
Grover.
Grover's done talking. I do have something to say to that. My response to that, the sub-genres, the Winter Soldiers, the Multiverse of Madness, horror, the Ant-Man heist comedy. As long as Marvel can keep, and what's another thing that Marvel's done that's with Stan Lee's vision? Grounded.
Yeah.
Being grounded has been such a success of Marvel Comics and the movies that keeps it fresh. So I don't think there's going to be superhero fatigue, at least within the MCU with Marvel Studios, as long as it stays grounded and as long as they continue to diversify these films and keep up the subgenres within the superhero genre, because it's going to keep it fresh, it's going to keep it new, and they're going to tell different types of stories with different types of characters.
That's a good point. We have gone way off track. Let's get back on track because you have the last most interesting book of the week off of this top 10 list. Chris, what do you got?
All right, guys. Oh, hey, Jeff, let's do what we did last week. Let's see if you want Dan in the audience to try to guess my number one pick.
I would love for that. Dan, what is his number one pick of the week? Or
let's bring up the 10.
What do you think, guys?
You want to bring up the 10 on screen?
Yeah, let's do that. Dan, so what would be your guess here out of the top 10 here? His third most interesting pick.
I mean, it's either going to be Kang or more indie.
I'm going to say neither. I'm going to say I would have said The Nice House on the Lake.
So does Miguel.g.comics. He's saying the same thing. All right, last chance, guys. Last chance for anybody else to guess here.
I forgot there was Yelena Belova on there too. Dang it. Sorry.
Well, so now we know it's not Yelena.
It's not that.
So All right. Anybody else have anything to chime in on? If not, Chris, you're going to give it away. You're going to let us know what's what.
All right. Well, Dan and Miguel, that's a great answer because I have to give it to DC Black Label Nice House on the Lake because this book has been on this list for weeks. It's crazy. Kudos, but that's not my pick. My pick is more Kang. Avengers 267. This is, guys, like I try to be humble, right? I do value humility, but it sometimes feels good. And I think we're allowed to give ourselves some credit when we talk about books and say, look, this is that book. I talked about this book months ago in another top 10 books to invest in. First appearance of the Council of Kangs. I said, guys, get this book. I think your average raw sale at that time was like $4.
Jesus.
202% increase in sales. A high raw sold this week for $199. $199. Get this. My viewers, I don't really sell comics. I want to maybe dive more into that in the Journals Comics brand. But I've done 2 claim sales on Instagram. I sold one of these books because I had a couple copies. Sold one of these books 3 months ago for like $4 or $5. So whoever bought that book, I hope you're happy because it was like a very fine book too. $199, mid 80s, copper, early copper age book. It goes back to what I was saying about Thor 245, folks. Everything Kang is absolutely on fire right now. And it really does surprise me. Now, I wish I had time this week to sit and calculate the numbers and to go back, look at eBay sold, see what this book was selling for a couple weeks ago. But I'm sure I gotta estimate that this book wasn't selling for an average more of around $10 average. It's absolutely nuts, the fire that Kang has brought. But I mean, well deserved. Kang is such a deeply layered character with obviously so many different variants and versions, but with such a layered history throughout the decade that these are important books, and they're going to be even more important if we see these things play out in the MCU. And again, it goes back to the conversation that Dan, Jeff, all of us just talked about. This is a character that is going to hang out a while, hopefully, in the MCU. We don't know if they're going to be the next Thanos. And there's a lot there to flesh out, though, and Marvel Studios can absolutely take its time to do so. Look at the factors, the multiverse. We already saw Immortus / He Who Remains as a variant. We know it's setting up Kang Prime, right? I have a feeling we're going to see Ramatut. And there's it's absolutely endless, and this can spread out amongst years. The Council of Kang, the Kang War, these are absolutely things that can happen that we're already seeing, not necessarily Easter eggs, but variables there that could absolutely lead into these things. So again, for me, I'm going to look back on this book as well another year from now and see how this book is doing on the market, because it's just absolutely amazing that these books are soaring in raw. These are raw copies. A crazy thing, we didn't even have sales data of both Thor 245 or Avengers 267. Why? Because these books weren't even looked at that much to be sent off to CGC or CBCS before last week. And now we're probably not going to see, even if people are fast tracking them, people are sending off their copies, especially, resellers. They're sending off their copies right now to get graded. It might be like 6 months before we see any of them come back on the market. We'll see what's going on then. But again, I mean, these are raw books that are doing this. Let's actually, another thing to factor in too. Let's see how many people are actually going to hold these books.
Yeah.
Or if in the next coming weeks, we're going to see more flooding the market. Mm-hmm. Because if more come on in the market, that could give way of the price a little bit. But if people are holding, which we know a lot of people are doing now, people think that, everybody in the hobby is just flippers and stuff. More and more people are holding on to these books. So really interesting list this week.
100%. By the way, I just want to give a shout out to Roger Levesque. Just finished his Terrificon preview show. We got to check that out ourselves.
Awesome.
But hey, man, how's it going? We are happy to see you, and we have to check out your preview show. Everybody follow 3 Men in a Basement. Link is below. They put out some great stuff. All right, yeah, Chris, absolutely fascinating what this book has done. Absolutely fascinating about the Kang effect. And I honestly, sometimes I think that some of these characters and storylines are too complicated for the mainstream to pick up, and I'm just proven wrong. First time I really thought that was Into the Spider-Verse, Academy Award-winning film. Now I'm seeing with Kang, it's like, honestly, I have high hopes for the mainstream and what their retention can be, what their interest is. And I'm really excited about this. Dan.
I swear, I'm not bragging when I say this. I bought that for 75 cents off the rack when it was new. It's the benefits of being an old collector. And I haven't sold it. I've read it again. I think that is going to be a very, very expensive book, especially if they expand on what Kang was describing in episode 6. That set the stage for all sorts of other things. And I've seen this kind of story before where Kang, Immortus, whatever you want to call him, sits and tells the 2 Lokis, I'm exhausted. He's been, I don't know how old he's, millions of years old. He's had to fight off all infinite number of Kangs because it's this incredible struggle for power. The last time I saw this kind of storyline as a Star Trek guy, Star Trek Voyager had an episode called Death Wish, and it described the continuum from Q. One of the Qs, who calls himself Quinn, they described that the continuum that they have evolved and evolved and evolved, and they got to a point where they were omnipotent. They could do anything, and they explored the entire universe. And then the saddest thing ever happened. They succeeded, and they learned everything about everything. And then they faced centuries of stagnation. And this one Q says, I'm exhausted. I want to die. And it gets on some very, very deep issues here. This story kind of reminds me of that. We can only imagine what this character has gone through. And also, while Ron, we also talk about Sophie and what she did. Did she do the right thing? Did Kang kind of like manipulate her into killing him because he wanted out? Or is now she's been ahead of our Loki in every step of the way. She's been right on everything, including dealing with what's the name of the character? Elias. She handled him she made it look easy. Maybe she knows something we don't. I'm beginning to think that's true. So we will have to wait, sadly, about a year or so till season 2 comes out. But this is going to cascade into all kinds of other directions.
I mean, it's definitely a change in the MCU. It's opened up. It's opened up endless possibilities, it's incredible what they can do now. It's incredible, and it's not forced upon us. It was organically told.